Hi everybody, this video will describe how to create a door interaction within Unity. The previous video we set up an interaction script and we set up the ability to be able to collect a coin. So when I play and go collect a coin, it destroys that coin and then saves that coin collect as a variable. Every time I collect a coin, it's going to increase that variable, 1, 2, 3 in my console there. So what we want to do now is expand upon that and show some other interactions. And I have little rooms over here in the corners of this level that I want to be able to access. And I have a script in here that can give me the opportunity to be able to see how the door runs. It's not actually running now because I need to load the previous script. So let's go back to this and let's remove my other script off for a second. And then we'll add our original door or original interaction script in here. All right, so now when we play, I can come over here to my door, and this is just a trigger volume. So when I go into the trigger volume, the door opens. When I exit the trigger volume, the door closes. So this is kind of like one of the Star Trek doors or whatnot. When you go into the space, the door will open. When I exit the space, the door will close. And I'll set this up as a prefab so that way I can make many copies of my door, and the door will always run no matter where that copy is. So it's a local door interaction. So that's what we're going to set up now. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my character and remove my previous script in here. And in the previous video we created this interactions A script. So I'm going to add that interactions A script back to my character movement. And that's the same place that my character movement script is on. So this is the hierarchy node for my character. And now let's create our door. So I'm going to remove out my prefabs in the rooms. Which I have a couple of individual objects in there. So if I look at this, I have a hierarchy, and this is what we're going to create. Hierarchy node, and then I have a trigger volume, which is a box slider, and then the door itself. So I'm going to remove that out because I have that saved as a prefab. And we'll come back and correct that and improve on that later. Okay, so for this one, I don't have a default mesh, so I'm just going to use the ProBuilder tools. If you don't have the ProBuilder, you can go to Window, Package Manager, and then go to Packages Unity Registry, and then search for ProBuilder. And you can install ProBuilder. This is a set of pre-created modeling tools or procedural modeling tools. So I'm going to go create just a simple door, and I'm going to Tools, ProBuilder, ProBuilder Window. Put it over my screen. And I'm going to create a new shape, and this is going to be a cube shape. So if I click on Cube from the drop down and click Build, so that creates a ProBuilder cube. I'll move this up some. The pivot point is going to be on one corner. So I'm going to, let's do zero out or reset the transforms. So it puts in the center of the grid. And I'm going to move my coin object out of the way. Move these other coin objects out of the way. I'm always going to create a prefab on the center of the grid and then kind of move it to where I want that to be. So I know I want this to be, let's see, scale X. We can do that as 2. And then scale Y, which is the vertical axis, we can do that as 3. And then scale Z, we can do that as 0.5. Okay, so it's a little bit thinner of a door. Can make it even smaller, maybe 0.25. That'll look pretty good. So I want to play, I want to always make sure that it's scaled properly to my character. It's not too big or too small. I don't want the player to be able to jump over this door, so that's a good thing that it's this high. And I've created a basic material. This is a basic flat blue material. So it's a kind of a matte material. So I'm going to take this material, I'm going to drag it over to that ProBuilder object. So it just adds that blue material to everything. And let's rename this. So in the previous video, we renamed our coin A because I already have some objects in my scene called coin, and I already have objects in my scene called door. So we're just going to call this door A. Alright, so it already has a mesh collider. The player can't move through the geometry. So we're good there in case we ever want to have a locked door or whatnot. But one thing we are going to add with this door is the pivot points at the bottom right, or bottom left rather, so that way that's the angle we're going to pivot off of. So we'll adjust that for the animation later, but we do need that animator component. So with that door A object, I'm going to add component and search for animator and add the animator component to this. All right, we need a couple of the things to get our door to run. We need a box collider, which is our trigger zone. I don't want that to kind of follow the door. So if I parent or add the box collider to the door, let's just do it quickly here, box collider. And then we can, I don't want to be 2 R's there, let's get it this way. When the door actually rotates, that box collider is going to rotate with it. So that's not what I want to happen. I want to have the collider stay still while the door animates. So let's take that box collider off of the door, and we're going to create an empty game object. So we'll do empty object, and we'll call this one door A trigger. And this is going to be what the zone is that the player can move into to open up and close the door. So door A trigger, and we're going to add a box collider to this object. Okay. So let's reset and the transforms, and then move this over. So I can actually hold down Control and use my snap tools. So I'm just holding down Control and kind of snap it to the center of the door there. And if your snaps are too high, we can always go to the grid settings and then grid access and go to edit grid and snap settings. And I can change my move snap to 0.25, which will just be lower. So if I close that and hold down Control, now I can kind of snap towards inside the door. There you go. So really the base of the door is right there. Okay. So now the size of the collider, you can change the size of the collider so it's the size of the character. So we can do, or the door, not character, the door. So we can have the height as 3 for Y, the X for 2, and then for the Z, we want this to be pretty large so that it gives enough room for the player to move inside and the door open without it hitting the character. So let's try 6. I think 6 would be good enough. So this is the zone the player can interact with to open up the door. The last thing for the door trigger is we're going to add a tag. And I already have a tag called door in here. But if you don't, you can go with the door trigger object selected, go to add tag, and go hit the plus symbol and add a new tag called door. So let's go back to our door A trigger and add that door tag to the trigger, because we're going to use the on trigger enter and look for a tag called door, which is going to be on this empty game object that has the box collider. Alright, so now we're ready to add the animation. But before we do that, we're going to add an empty game object, and this is going to be called door base A. Alright, and this is going to be the hierarchy node. Let's center or reset the transforms, put it back to the corner. And we're going to take our door A object and door A trigger and parent that underneath the door base A. So basically this is our housing movement option, so I can move this entire door base A, or and it will move the entire system and structure that we've created. Alright, so we're not going to create a prefab until the end. We're going to go ahead and create our animation here. Okay, so we have our animation or animator on the door A object, and we're going to open up the animation window. And if you don't have that, you can go to Window, Animation, and Animation. We also need the animator window because we're going to trigger this with the script. So in the animation window with the door A object that has the animator component on there, we're going to click Create to create a new animation clip. And in my Assets folder, underneath my Meshes folder, I have an Animation subfolder. If you don't have a folder, you can create a new one. And I'm going to call this one Door A Open Anim. I already have a couple already in here for my previous prefab. Door A Open Anim. And I'm going to turn on the record button. In the first frame, I want to have the door closed. And then let's just do 30 frames later. I want that door to open. So we'll do, let's see, -90. Here we go. And that creates 2 keyframes, one on 0 where the door is closed, and the second one where the door is open. Okay. So if I play that back, you can see it's a pretty fast motion. We'll go back to frame 0. We want to create another animation clip, which would be our door closed animation. So we'll create a new clip with this door object selected. And then we'll call this one door A closed anim. There you go. Alright, and we'll turn our record button on. This time I want it to start open and then close. So let's do a -90 on frame 0. And then 30 frames later, we're going to do back to 0. So I'm just rotating this in the y-axis. So that's going to start open and then end closed. Okay, so I can hit play and kind of watch that happen as well. Let's go back to our door A open anim. And that's going to start with our door close and open up. So we have two animations, a door open and a door close. I don't want these to loop. I just want them to be triggerable in my script. So let's go to our animations folder and find our door A open. And in the inspector, I'm going to turn off loop time. I do not want this to loop. And I'm going to select my door A closed anim and turn off loop time. I don't want them to start to begin with. I want to trigger that motion with the script. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is with that door A object, we're going to go into the animator window, which is our state machine editor. And I have my two animations. If your animations aren't in here, you can just go to your animations folder and drag them into the animator. But they should come in here as default. And the entry point is what happens when the gameplay starts playing. Right now that's set to play the door A open animation. I don't want that. I want it to start in an idle or unopened standpoint. So I want to right click in the gray area and create state, and we'll do empty. And with that state selected, we can just call this one idle, which basically means it's not going to be doing anything. There's no motion, there's no change. I'm also going to right click on that idle empty state and choose set as layer default state. So that way as the gameplay starts, it's going to be an idle, the door is not going to animate. Okay, so this is a state machine. This will allow us to, zoom out a little bit, allow us to transition in and out of different animations according to a parameter that we are going to create. So we're going to right click on idle as our default state, and we're going to choose make transition. And then I'm going to click and drag to door A open animation. I want the first state transition to go into door animation. From idle, the door is closed, I want to be able to have the option to open that door. We're going to right click on door A open animation and choose make transition and connect that to door A closed. So after the door is open, I want to give the option to then close the door. Then after the door is closed, I want to go back into the idle state. So we're going to right click on door A close animation, make transition, drag to idle. So that's a full loop, or our full state system here. We want to be able to open and close the door and then go back to idle. So we can go in and out of this collision zone and repeat that action if we want to. So the next thing we want to do is add a parameter which will give us a Boolean true false that we can access in our script to be able to open and close the door when we want to. So in the parameters tab of the animator, we're going to click the plus symbol and choose bool for Boolean, and this is a true false statement. And we're going to title this one is open in question mark. And you need to make sure you know how to spell this, or how you spelled it, so that way in our script we can call this properly. So is open. It's always an action we want to add for Booleans or triggers. So we create that Boolean, and I want to go into this first transition, which is the first arrow from idle to door A open anim. I want to turn off has exit time. I don't want to blend the animation. But under the conditions, here's where I add that parameter we just created. So let's click the plus symbol. I only have one parameter, which is open, and then I want to keep true on. So if we want to transition out of idle state, is open should be true, and then it will play the door animation. So that first transition, the first arrow condition, we added the is open true. The second transition, the transition from door A open to door A closed, we're going to turn off exit time again. And we're going to go to conditions and hit the plus symbol. This time we're going to use is open, but we're going to turn it to false. So is open is false now. So if that's the case, then play door A closed animation. This last transition, we're not going to add a condition. We want it to blend from door A closed animation after that's done to the idle. I'm going to leave exit time on, but I am going to come down here and we can look at the has exit time settings. and we'll reduce the exit time to 0.25. Okay. We can also increase that to 0.75, so more of the door animation is going to happen before it can transition into idle. So we'll leave that at 0.75. I think that's pretty good. We can also change the transition duration, which is 0.25. So that's 0.25 of the door animation may be cut off as it's blended into idle. All right, so that's the animations. We are ready to go into our script now. So we have a script already created called Interactions A, and this is already added to our big character hierarchy movement object. So here's our interaction script that we created previously. In the last video we created the coin collect. So now we're going to add to that. So considering we're going to make this into a prefab, we need a couple of things set up. This is not too long of a script, but we are going to need one private variable, and this is going to be the reference to the animator, so that way we can find the door object that has the animator on there and then call the animation as we need to. So underneath the private int coin collect that we've done before from the previous video, we're going to add another private, and we're going to call this one animator as the type, and then we're going to call this one door animator ref. Alright, so that's going to be a local variable that we're going to use. We're going to use the onTrigger enter, and then we're also going to use the onTrigger exit. So in our onTrigger enter, we're going to return down underneath our if statement for our pick up and destroy coin, and we're going to add another if statement which is going to be very similar to checking if an object has a tag called pickup. Instead, we're going to check if the object has a tag called door, because that's what we set up for our box collider trigger object. So if I do if open parentheses other.gameObject.compare tag, and we'll do open parentheses again, open quotations, and door, close quotation, close parentheses, and we're going to add a comment here. We'll just say open door, and then return down, and we'll open and close curly brackets. So here's where we need to figure out how to get to that door object. Let's go back into Unity for a second. So our door trigger is what we're colliding with. Well, we can't innately just find our door A object, especially once we get a prefab. So we want to be able to have instance copies of this whole door throughout our scene for as many different times we have rooms we want to close up with the door. So we need to first see where we're colliding with the door trigger, and then we're going to look up what's the parent of that. The parent of that needs to be the door base A. And then once we know that the parent of the door trigger is the door base A, then we're going to look down and find an object that's going to be called door A. Okay. So that's our hierarchy in order to get to the animator component of the door A object. So here's how we're going to set that up. In our if statement here for our compare object door, which says here's the door trigger, we need to create a couple of local variables here. So the first one is going to be a transform variable, and we're going to call this one door ref. So that's going to be equals to other.transform.parent.find, capital F for find, and open parentheses, open quotation, door A, close quotation, close parentheses, and semicolon. So this line is going to look for the compare tag of the door trigger, and then look for the parent, transform parent, and then underneath the parent find an object named door A. So that's going to do that command for us to be able to get to this object called door A. Alright, so then underneath that, that'll store that information as a door ref local variable. Underneath that, I need another variable to convert that door ref variable into finding the animator component of that door ref. So we're going to do animator is the type, and we're going to call this door animator equals door ref, get our reference for the door A object that we just created or found, door ref.get component, and open up an angle bracket, and we're going to find the animator component, close angle bracket, open and close parentheses, and semicolon. So this line then goes into that door A object after it's been found and finds the animator component of that door A object. Alright, so one more line is we're actually going to use this private animator door ref, and we're going to say door animator, if I can spell correctly, animator ref equals door animator. Semicolon at the end there. So that will save all of those conversions of finding the parent, finding the door A, then finding the animator of this door ref, and saves that in our private variable called door animator ref. So that way I only have to really do these functions once, or at least call in once. Alright, so the next line is the actual line that plays the animation. So now that I have my door animator ref, I'm going to do dot set bool. That was a boolean we created, which is our transition. So dot set bool, open parentheses, open quotation, and then what did I call that boolean? So if I go back to my animator, I called it is open question mark. So I'm going to title that in here, is open question mark, and close that quotation, and then I'm going to do comma true. Okay, so as default that boolean is set to false, which means it's not going to play the animation. Door animator ref dot set bool, and what we're looking for is the is open boolean, and then we're going to set that to true. Let's do a semicolon at the end. And then to debug this, we're going to add a line that prints on the console, debug dot log, open parentheses, open quotation, door open. And close all that out, do a semicolon at the end. Alright, so that'll open the door. Okay, but what about closing the door? That will just one time open the door, won't give an option to close the door back. So that is our setup to open a door, and that's in the onTrigger_enter. Now, we also need to create an onTrigger_exit. So we're going to do void onTrigger_exit, and we'll open up parentheses and do collider other. Okay, and then we're going to return down and do open and close our curly bracket. And we're going to repeat here. We don't need all of this that we did earlier because we stored these top two lines in our private variable called door animator ref. So what we are going to need is another if statement that says if other.gameObject.compare tag, and open up quotation, or parentheses, open up quotation, door, so it's going to look for an object that has a tag called door, and we're going to add a comment that says close door. We're going to open up and close curly brackets, and the only thing we need is the door animator ref dot set bool, open parentheses, open quotations, is open, close quotation, comma, false. And we'll finish that statement out with a semicolon, and then we'll do another debug log, debug.log, and then this one's going to say door closed. Okay, round that up. Okay, so we have the private variable that we're calling door animator ref, so that way we only have to recall this once. And then in void onTrigger, we have our if statement that compares to a tag called door, and then we're going to store local variables of where that door A object is, and then where the animator component of that door A object is. And then we're going to store that into our private variable called door animator ref. The next line is actually the animation section, where we play back the door open animation by setting a boolean is open to true, and then we're going to debug, say in the console print open door, or door open. Then we have a void trigger exit, where same idea, we're going to check to see if the other objects has a tag of door, and if so, do the set bool is open false, which will play the door close animation, and then print out door close to the console. Let's hit Control S to save. Let's go into Unity. Alright, it's giving me a warning because I don't have exit time on some of these transitions. That's okay, it's not going to be a big deal. I don't want transition times, but there's no errors. And let's go test this out. So let's hit play. Alright, so I'm not in the zone, so the door is closed. If I move into the zone, whoop, I need to change one thing. I can't collide. I can't move in the zone. So one last thing we got to do is the door trigger. We need to change the box collider to is trigger. So that way I can actually move in the zone. So with is trigger checked for that door A trigger object, now let's go play. Now when I move in the zone, the door opens. When I move out of the trigger zone, the door closes. So move in, made the trigger box a lot larger, wider this direction so I can move in and out of the door as well on both sides. So our animation works. So the only thing we need to do now, let's get out of play mode, is convert our door base A to a prefab. So let's go to our prefabs folder, and to do that we're just going to drag our door base A, the hierarchy node, into our prefabs folder, and that converts it into a prefab. So now I can take my door and let's rotate it 90 degrees, like negative 90. And then I'm going to hold down Control and snap it over here to the door. Actually, let me go back and I'm going to turn my grid snap back up to 0.5, a little higher. Okay, so I'm going to snap this back and kind of place it in my room that I've created over here. There you go. Pull this to the back of the room. There you go. Alright, so I can also make a copy. So we'll do Control D. We'll rotate this, and we'll rotate this like another 180 or another 90 degrees, which is a negative 180. So the door will rotate inward. And I'm holding down Control and snapping this to the position that I want that to be. So this one I might need to go back down to 0.5. The placement of it is a little different. 0.25 for my snapping. There you go. Alright, so now let's go play. So I have a couple of copies of my door prefab. And with this hierarchy structure, each one of them should work independently. So that one works well, inside and outside the door. Go test our second one. There you go, so that one works. Maybe I got to work on my position a little bit. If I look at my console, it is showing me open and closed door each time here. So if I get out of the way, every time I move in the door, it'll say door open. If I leave that exit zone, it'll say door closed. Door open, door closed. So that way it is working properly. So that's how we can set up interactive doors. Kind of like a Star Trek door that if you move into a zone, the door opens, and you move out of the zone, the door closes. So we've added to our interactions script to add a door interaction now. That'll wrap up this video on how to create a door interaction.